Okay.
Do 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 science. Do 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 science. Do 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 science. Do 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 science. Do 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 science. Do 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 science. You're done?
Done. Hey guys, I hope you're still doing well. Today we are going over conjugate acids and bases. It shouldn't be too difficult. This is your assignment for, oh goodness, I don't even know. I don't have your calendar up. Your assignment for the 22nd. Today, all you have to technically do is watch this YouTube video, and then your assignment is due tomorrow. So hopefully this will be able to help you go through those. What your worksheet will be and what this will look like. Hold on, let me show you what I'm doing. This is what was shared with you. Oh, I can't go over that far. Here we go. This is what was shared with you, and what you'll be doing is identifying each part. So you have a handful of different equations here, and you just need to identify if they're acids, bases, conjugate acids, or conjugate bases. I know that sounds crazy, but you will be able to do it. And then this last section is kind of a fill in the blank, where I give you enough information to be able to identify these, but it's not in the same order. So it's a little bit of backwards thinking. If you read the top of this, it tells you that an acid is defined as a proton donor. In this case, the proton donor is going to be a hydrogen ion, and a base is defined as a proton acceptor. So that's going to accept that hydrogen cation. The substance that is produced after an acid has donated its proton is called a conjugate base, while the substance formed when the base accepts a proton is called a conjugate acid. I know, again, it sounds weird, but I promise I'll show you how to trace these things and you'll be able to identify them. The conjugate acid can donate a proton to the conjugate base and reform the original reactants in the reverse reaction. So here I have an example for you, and it's already labeled, but I want to show you what's going on. So if you take a look here, I'm just going to copy down that same example. So in this one, we were talking about sorry, I can't write and think at the same time, apparently. 1 second. Here we go. So here I have everything copied down, and so I need to identify each of these as a base acid, conjugate base, or conjugate acid. And the first thing you need to know is that your acids and bases, I'm going to try and color code this again, will always be reactants. And so your acid and base is going to be located over on the left side of the arrow. So if you want to remember that, acids and bases are always reactants. That should help you identifying things. And your worksheet said that acids were always going to give away a proton. And in this case, it's always going to be an H+, and bases are always going to accept a proton. And again, it's going to be that H+. So what you want to do when you're identifying these is you want to figure out which of these two could give away a hydrogen and which of these two could gain a hydrogen. Now here we already have the answer. So I know that my fluorine is what lost a hydrogen. So if I'm keeping track of that, if this hydrogen is going to be lost from this compound and gained over here, that would make this, it's giving it away. Oh, I should have done that in pink. Sorry. This is then considered my acid, which would make this other one over here my base. So again, I identified this as my acid because I saw that it gave away a hydrogen, and I identified this as my base because it is going to accept that hydrogen. The next part of your little blurpet that I read said that your conjugate acid, I'm just going to call it a C acid, is the product of the base plus your H+, or plus your proton. And your conjugate base is the product of the acid losing an H plus. So again, these are going to be products. So they're going to be found to the right of your arrow. They will never be reactants. So I've already narrowed that down. And again, if I look back at this, it says in pink that my conjugate acid is the product of the base. So it's this base plus an H plus. So I'm going to find this base plus an H plus. This doesn't even have any H's in it anymore. So this is my only option. This is H2O plus an H. So this has become my conjugate acid. And then just to follow along here, it says that my conjugate base is the product of my acid losing an H. So again, that hydrogen is lost, and all that was left was a fluorine, and so that is here. This would be our conjugate base. Hopefully that makes sense. You should be able to do these. The last part of that little blurb it says that if you wanted to run this in reverse, so if I wanted to then take this extra hydrogen from my conjugate acid and put it back to my base, I would be left with my same reactants that I started with. So again, your assignment, looking over at this, the first couple problems, what you're going to be doing is identifying each part. So is my hydrochloric acid, and I just gave you the answer, is that my acid or a base? And then which of these is my conjugate acid, conjugate base? Some hints for you: anything with an OH is typically going to be a base. Anything that starts with an H is typically going to be an acid. There are some exceptions to the rule, but every single time with the examples I gave you, your acids and bases will always be a reactant and your conjugates will always be a product. And then when you get down to the bottom, you're filling in the blanks. So I gave you enough information to be able to do these, but these do require you to think about them in a little bit of a different way. So I would recommend doing these after you've done your first problems. So do it in the order of the worksheet. But if you're up for a challenge and you want to try it in reverse, go for it. But as always, if you guys have any questions, please be emailing me with those. Otherwise, this is the last thing that you guys need to do for this week. So enjoy.
Do 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 science. Do 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 science. Do 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 science. Do 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 science. Do 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 science. Do 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 science.